Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Today marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day and the launching of the Battle of Normandy. It was a bloody battle and a historic turning point in the Second World War. Ceremonies were being held across France, including Juno Beach, which was invaded by Canadian soldiers on this day 80 years ago. Ceremony started with a jump by the Canadian Armed Forces parachute team, the Skyhawks. The Skyhawks jumped out of a Hercules aircraft from 2,500 feet, deploying their Canadian flag canopies and landing on Juno Beach. Among the dignitaries on hand at the Canadian commemorative ceremony at Juno Beach were Prince William, Prime Minister Trudeau, the Prime Minister of France, and Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak. Several Indigenous elements were incorporated into the ceremony, including a flag song and victory song by a father-daughter duo from Kawakatus First Nation in Saskatchewan, who are members of the Cree Spirit Singers. Métis veteran and elder Josie Searson led the prayer. There was also First Nations representation during the reading of the Commitment to Remember. Here's some of what the Prime Minister had to say.
On this day, 80 years ago, Canadian troops progressed further inland than any of our allies. It was a remarkable achievement and a costly one, too. I can promise you that Canada and the world will keep commemorating this significant day for decades and generations to come.
In other news, the First Nations girl in rural Manitoba is speaking out against the racism she says she experienced while wearing her ribbon skirt to high school. She says the school hasn't done enough to combat the harassment she went through. Sav Jones has that story.
Red Dress Day happens across Canada every May to raise awareness about violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. 17-year-old Serenity Nepen says she and others were encouraged to show their support at her high school in Roblin, Manitoba, one of 16 schools in the Mountain View School Division. She thought it was a good idea.
You know what? It would be perfect to wear my ribbon skirt. It's a nice day out. I'm going to support this.
Nepen picked up a friend on the way to school, but when she arrived,
I got out of my truck and I made eye contact with this one boy. And he yells towards me, Indian, and does a mocking Indian call at me. And that hurt very much.
She says this fellow student and his friend laughed at her, but despite this, she held her head high and walked into school. In class, Nepen says he called her an Indian again, but quietly so the teacher couldn't hear.
That's when I was like, no, I had enough. I can't. So I went to talk to my friend and I said, I am uncomfortable. I feel humiliated and I want to go home and change. And that's when she decided, no, we're not letting this slide. We're going to the principal. And that's what we did.
Nepen says the principal seemed caring and told her he would make things right. He brought the boy and his friend to his office and asked if they called her an Indian. They said no. After days of back and forth between the principal, Nepen, and her mom, the principal concludes it's a he said, she said issue and nothing more can be done. But for Nepen, the story isn't over. Grand Chief of the Southern Chiefs Organization, Jerry Daniels, says he stands with Nepen.
They go to school to get education. They don't go to school to be traumatized and treated differently from everyone else.
He has a few ideas on how the situation could be handled.
The messaging coming from the leadership over there can't be, well, it's he said, she said. It has to be, racism will not be tolerated. We have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to racism, and here's the reason, here are the things we're going to do to change it.
Grand Chief Daniels says students like Serenity Nepen need backup.
We would like to see, a First Nations liaison who's in the school. I think that there needs to be a closer partnership with the First Nations in that region to have our own board members as trustees. That's separate from the regular system.
APTN News reached out to the school division. On May 27th, their now former superintendent, Stephen Jaddock, emailed a response. He wrote the division does not comment on individual discipline investigations, but bullying and verbal harassment is not tolerated. He added, "We continue to work with our students in MVSD on reconciliation matters, and school staff will engage students in conversations regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion." In the last few days, 4 weeks after the alleged name-calling, the school division announced Jadok had departed his position. Soon after, 3 elected school trustees quit. Another current elected trustee, Paul Coffey, said in a public board meeting in April that he refuses to refer to Indigenous people as anything other than Indians, and this about residential schools.
They were good. Like, these are the good things. They're essential for reading and writing and arithmetic. Also enforcement of schools, school attendance.
For now, Nepen says she just wants to move on.
I have not gotten an apology from the boys. I have not gotten an apology from the school. As a matter of fact, that principal won't even look at me now.
She says she's kind of scared to go back next year, the year she graduates.
In my mind, it's like, well, what if this happens next year again? And is it going to be worse, or is it going to be better because now hopefully we're going to take steps forward? It makes me nervous.
Meanwhile, Manitoba's Education Minister, Nello Altamar, says he's ordered what he calls a governance review into the Mountain View School Division. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Sav. After trying to escape Morocco for several years following an assault, a woman from Buffalo Point First Nation in southern Manitoba returned home yesterday. The sound of drumming and warm hugs from family welcomed Carrie Kobanes and her 2 young children at the Winnipeg airport. In July 2021, Kobanes told APTN she was brutally assaulted and broke while living in Casablanca. She launched a GoFundMe page after trying to get help from the Canadian Embassy, the Assembly of First Nations, and Buffalo Point First Nation. Now, after a years-long battle, Kobanes says she's just happy to be home.
So it's going to take a long time to adjust because I'm still in shock that I'm even landed here. It's just a dream to me. I kept telling my mom I'm going to come, I promise, but it was a big battle over there for my kids. So now I'm home and I don't think I'm ever going to leave.
It's a day of celebration and reflection for the Inuit in the Western Arctic. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs takes a look at the impact the Inuvialuit final agreement has had for so many.
It's been 40 years since the Inuvialuit final agreement was signed. Around 200 beneficiaries and their well-wishers are here in Yellowknife, celebrating the first comprehensive land claim agreement north of 60 and the second of its kind in Canada. Maya Semler from Inuvik is here with her son Mazen.
Being Inuvialuit is being strong and resilient. I'm very proud to be Inuvialuit, and my whole family, basically my whole family is Inuvialuit, and I love my culture, I love everything about it.
Of course, cuisine like muktuk is on the menu.
I'd like to bring him home a lot more so that he can grow up with our culture. It's dying off slowly, so I would like him to grow up with the elders so he can pick up as much of the language. My grandma, she speaks fluently in her language.
Maya's mother, Lisa Semler, is an NWT cabinet minister and MLA. She won't miss it.
When this all started, my grandmother was a negotiator, and so all I remember is these adults in a room and meetings after meetings after meetings, listening to some of the past elders, some of them who passed on. It was just making sure, like I said, that they have say over their lands, that they have secured the Inuvialuit region for their future generations.
The agreement signed on June 5, 1984 includes managerial control over the area's economy and environment, an important step towards full self-governance. This is thanks to the establishment of the Inuvialuit Regional Corporation, a DevCorp now worth $1.25 billion. The corporation is said to support Inuvialuit self-reliance by allowing them to participate fully in the Canadian economy. The IFA designates over 90,000 square kilometers as the Inuvialuit settlement region and includes close to 13,000 square kilometers of subsurface ownership. There are 6 main communities in the region: Inuvik, Tuktaktuk, Aklavik, Uluaktuk, Sax Harbor, and Polituk. Eileen and Albert Rubin are from Polituk.
In my time, we never really ever had a voice until our final agreement was negotiated. And now we are involved in pretty much all aspects of our
Byron Kodakak says the IFA has allowed Inuvialuit to keep living the way they always have.
Being out on the land when you're hunting, it's just knowing that you're able to bring food home to the family, and it's just, you can't beat it. Like, there's no way you can just go to a grocery store, grab some food and go back, right? It's not like back home where you can just go out on the land and get most healthiest food.
40th anniversary celebrations are also taking place in Whitehorse, Edmonton, and Inuvik. Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Congrats to the Inuvialuit. Our Truth and Politics panel is here to discuss a lawsuit filed by the Grassy Narrows First Nation over mercury contamination. That and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. As we told you earlier in the week, the Grassy Narrows First Nation in northwestern Ontario is suing the federal government and province of Ontario over decades of mercury contamination in the English Wabigoon River system. The lawsuit comes on the heels of new research that shows wastewater from the Dryden paper mill may be exacerbating mercury contamination that dates back decades. That's the topic for our Truth and Politics panel this week. Nigan Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press, and Jennifer Leowitz is a policy analyst with War Shield. Jennifer, Nigan, thanks for being with us. Jennifer, we'll start with you and your thoughts on Grassy Narrows First Nation deciding to go the legal route in this decades-long issue of mercury contamination in the river system and its impact on the people there.
I think that this was a long time coming. I think that the fact that this has been going on for as long as it has been is unacceptable. You know, I was reading a little bit more about it this morning, and I think taking both the provincial and the federal governments to court is the right move. You know, time is going on. As far as I know, this has been going on since like the 1960s, and there has been man-made contamination to this river. So at what point is anyone going to take responsibility for this, especially when it has impacted the livelihoods of people living in Grassy Narrows?
Nigan, like Jennifer said there, do you feel this is a long overdue lawsuit?
Well, I could just imagine the vindication for Judy De Silva and all those at the occupation camp in Grassy Narrows who fought not just there, but also all the way in Queen's Park in Ontario, and have been doing that for decades, literally putting their bodies on the line to fight for clean water in Grassy Narrows. So kudos to them. They should really take the real credit for this. They kept the issue going. And what we're seeing is multiple First Nations across the country. Right here in Manitoba, you see about 10 First Nations that are suing the City of Winnipeg for a sewage spill. When governments, municipal, provincial, federal, act irresponsibly for decades, they've not been held to account, but because now we are considering or including or having to come into harmony with Indigenous rights in law with Bill C-15, we're seeing First Nations stand up for themselves and being able to advocate for themselves. When egregious acts like this happen, governments must be held to account for acting so irresponsibly. And in the end of the day, Canadians, all Canadians, get drinking water, fresh air, food to eat as a result.
Jennifer, the statement of claim reads like a mini history lesson of the issue. There was a lawsuit in 1977 where Grassy Narrows and another First Nation sued the feds, the province, past and previous mill owners. That resulted in a $17 million settlement. But from there, Ontario indemnified any future lawsuits, the companies. Is this an example of government favoring industry over the people?
Potentially, yes. And another issue that I'm seeing out of this is that exactly. You know, there not being much responsibility put back onto the industry. But also, when we don't have much standards to go off of, then who's responsible? You know, if there's a water spill in a municipality in the province of Saskatchewan, for example, we have a security agency that oversees the water. But right now, there's no real standard. So who's responsible? And, I'm going to be really interested to see how this plays out in court, because the fact that the provincial government has done that may make things difficult for the nations that are trying to, hold the government accountable for the failed water crisis across the country, but especially for Grassy Narrows.
Nigan, how do you see this playing out? Of course, these haven't been tested in court yet, but like you mentioned, there's the 10 or so First Nations here in Manitoba also, taking certain levels of government to court over these types of issues.
It's the important thing to identify with the Grassy Narrows case is the negotiation back years ago did not indemnify on future and chronic neglect. That's the real challenge here. If you look at the sewage spill here in Manitoba, it's because of the chronic neglect for decades of the piping system of sewage and the fact that the city of Winnipeg has been leaking sewage, even announcing, telling that they openly do that to clean out the pipes for the city. And who pays for that? Well, First Nations way up the river off Lake Winnipeg, the overabundance of algae, even fishermen in Manitoba pay for all of this chronic neglect. And when governments continue to neglect, continue to act irresponsibly, I don't care what law judgment goes decades ago, no court will be able to just simply give people a carte blanche to act irresponsibly for decades to come.
Jennifer Nigan, we'll leave it there. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks.
We have a preview of tomorrow night's all-new APTN Investigates coming up after the break. Welcome back. Let's take a look now at our photo of the day. And it's harvest time if you grow Haskap berries. This photo was taken by David Bowers and sent to us by Métis Mike. Here a farmer shares some berries with their adorable helper, Chrissy. Thanks for that photo. You can send us your photos to share@aptn.ca for your chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 25 and cloudy in Fredericton, showers and 22 for Halifax. 15 with rain in Kuujjuaq, 7 and cloudy in Nain. 22 with showers in Montreal, rain and 20 for Val-d'Or. 13 with rain in Sault Ste. Marie, 17 in showers for North Bay. More rain in Northern Ontario, 20 in Thunder Bay, 18 in Sioux Lookout. 13 with showers for God's Lake, cloudy, and 14 in Norway House. 21 with rain in Winnipeg, showers and 20 for Dauphin. 21 with rain in Regina, some sun, and 21 in Saskatoon. 19 and cloudy in Meadow Lake, showers and 12 for La Ronge. In northern Alberta, snow and 5 above for Fort Chip, showers and 11 in Fort McMurray. 19 in Edmonton, 21 in Lethbridge. Sun's out in BC, 22 for Vancouver, 27 in Kamloops. 20 and sunny in Prince George, 21 under the sun for Smithers. 19 in Old Crow, sunny and 18 in Whitehorse. 7 with rain in Yellowknife, showers and 16 in Norman Wells. 10 for Sax Harbor, cloudy and 16 in Polituck. 5 in Chesterfield, 6 in Whale Cove. +2 in Resolute, 1 above with snow in Igloolik. A book written over 4 decades by a residential school and domestic violence survivor was launched on Wednesday night. In 1 second at a time, Diane Morisseau tells her story of resilience with the help of co-author Elizabeth Brannigan. APTN's Sierra Bettens brings us to the event.
I'm happy. I never thought I would say that. I'm happy. I'm grateful to be alive.
On Wednesday evening, dozens gathered to celebrate the launch of Diane Morisseau and Elizabeth Brannigan's book, 1 Second at a Time. In it, Morisseau shares her story of struggle, healing, and resilience as a residential school and domestic violence survivor. The book was a work in progress for decades. She began writing in the early 1980s after getting into a 12-step self-help program.
I did a lot of work on myself, trauma. I had to do a lot of healing to be strong enough to do this. It was very, very difficult, opening wounds, old wounds.
A few years ago, Morso met Elizabeth Brannigan when they worked together at a treatment center in Seguin First Nation. They soon became friends, and later, co-authors.
She shared a little bit of her struggles with finding someone who could help her write the story. And while I wasn't a writer, I had a dream to write, and I offered to try.
When she's not writing, and even though she is retired, Morso still helps people like her get on the path to healing. By sharing her story with the world, she hopes her words will help victims of violence know they are not alone and that a better future exists.
I know this was meant to happen, and I always hope, even after I'm gone, it will help someone. That's my dream.
Sierra Buttons, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
In the spring of 2015, 2 fishermen drowned on the Bay of Quinte in southeastern Ontario. Police claim the pair were stealing fish, overloaded their boat and caused it to sink. But tomorrow on APTN Investigates, journalist Kenneth Jackson returns to Tyendinaga Mohawk territory to put those theories to test. Here's a preview.
I thought it was in between those 2 trees right there.
I think they said it was right here and between these trees. They found the boat.
It's not even fair that we have to do this.
And it should have been done a long time ago.
Exactly.
Not us.
It's going to be a powerful episode. You can catch APTN Investigates Secrets of the Bay Chapter 3 tomorrow night, immediately following the APTN National News. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuitch. Thanks for being with us. Be sure to join Creason at 1 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow for your first look at the day's news. I will see you back here tomorrow night.